Hello and welcome to the Digital Photo Academy. In this video, we're going to look at something called the preferences in Photoshop. What are these preferences really about? Well, these preferences allow you to create a personalized setting in the back end of Photoshop to create whatever kind of efficiencies or whatever work that suits you. So to start off, on the Mac, you simply go to the top left where it says Photoshop, click in there, and you click on Preferences, and you can start off with General. You will also notice that there is a keyboard shortcut associated with it, which is called Command K. On a Windows platform, if you're using Photoshop, you will need to go onto Edit, and all the way towards the bottom, you will see something called Preferences, which is exactly the same space that exists in the Mac environment. So fundamentally, it's all the same. Now, you don't need to change everything in here, but eventually it's a choice that you make. I have not modified these preferences. So whatever I'm seeing here is what the defaults are. So it's a choice that you need to make. How do you wish to set your preferences? Now, preferences will be driven by your choices. Okay, so I am simply going to create a set of preferences that I believe are good for me, and I'll try to rationalize as well. So one of the things that I like is have auto update open file based documents. I don't like to export the clipboard because there is really no need for it. And clipboard is something when you copy something from one image, paste it to another document, another image, or another application. So Photoshop will end up saving all of those things and just create unnecessary junk. Use legacy new document interface. Since I am working in Photoshop CC 2021, which is version 22, the interface is slightly different. So if I preferred using the older one, this is what I will do. And then, skip transform when placing. Basically, when you copy and paste an image into a new document, or you are placing an image directly through Adobe Bridge, or dragging and dropping and placing, you have the option of transforming it or not. By default, it'll come up with the hangers to transform or to scale it. So it's up to you. So I kind of prefer to have that available because I've already left this resize image during placement. So it'll basically resize the image to fit the window. And I also prefer to keep the placed images as smart objects. So I have left this alone. Then the color picker, you have a choice of Adobe, or let's say in my case, since I'm on an Apple computer, it says Apple. If you're working on Windows, be it Windows 10, 7, whatever it may, it will show you the Microsoft color management system. So I suggest for photography, it should be left to Adobe. The heads-up display color picker, it's again, what size do you want? How do you wish to appear? I kind of like it to leave it alone. Image interpolation, bicubic automatic, I've left it alone. The important ones or the relevant ones are, let's say, the interface. What color interface do you wish to have? Do you want it to be dark? Do you want it to be light? Do you want it to be lighter still? Do you want it to be white? Again, personal preferences. I kind of like it mid-gray, so I am leaving it alone where it is. Standard screen mode is set to default. You want it black, you can make it black. You want it dark gray, you can make it dark gray. I kind of like it to be dark gray. Full screen with menus, default, I would leave it to default. Full screen black, absolutely yes. Artboards, default black, dark gray, again, I'll leave it to the default. Do you want any drop shadows showing through in the window? You want a line separating? You want nothing? I prefer the line because drop shadow takes up just a tiny bit more resource. Same idea as opposed to a drop shadow, I'll just keep a line. Full screen, I don't want anything in here. In the artboard, I just want a line. That's all. Okay, user interface is language, and this is the font size. You want it tiny, you can make it tiny, or you want it small, you want it medium. I kind of prefer to have it medium, and that's it. So scale user interface to font, so the user interface will also scale up according to the size of the font that you choose. Leave these alone. Show menu colors, show channels and colors, and dynamic color sliders. You don't need to worry about it. Then coming to the workspace. This is important to a certain degree. You have options, because there's so many panels within the Photoshop world, how you wish those to behave. So if I were to say auto collapse iconic panel, so things will collapse by themselves once I'm done with it. I kind of like to leave it alone. So generally leave this to the default. Tools is important for me. Now, if you recall, in Photoshop, when the preferences option is not open and you hovered your cursor over a tool, you will start to see a window with directions as to what this tool is about. That refers to the rich tool tips. So that again takes up resources. Depending on the nature of resources you have in your image, you may wish to use that. I don't personally need to do that. Enable gestures, use shift keys for tool switch, over scroll, flick panning. Flick panning is very useful if you are using a touch device where you can actually just flick with the finger and it just continues scrolling very gently and slows down. So I'm working on a desktop. I don't have a touch thing other than when I use the tablet. So I really don't care about the flick panning. I would leave the rest of the stuff alone, honestly. This is a personal choice. Do you wish the zoom to work with a scroll wheel? If you decide to, by all means, go for it. Animated zoom, sure. Zoom resizes window. I think that's a good idea. History log, you don't need to do anything unless you're going to be developing some actions and things like that, where you might wish to record the entire history of everything that you had done or committed to a file. So you don't really need this. File handling is relevant in some ways. One of the things that I really like now in Photoshop is automatically save recovery information every so often. So the default is 10 minutes. Okay, you can choose whatever you want. Personally, for me, 10 minutes is adequate, which is also the default. If you wish to be very safe and secure, you can set it to 5 minutes or whatever you wish to. Okay, camera raw preferences are a separate area. If I click, then it takes me there. We're going to talk that separately. Then leave most of these to the defaults. Okay, now the one thing that is important is maximize PSD and PSB file compatibility. If you click in here, there's a choice of never, always, or ask. I strongly personally feel that it should be left to always, particularly if you're also a Lightroom user. And while working in Lightroom, you process your raw file and then you decide to export it out as a PSD file, and then you may be opening, or you may decide you want to immediately open the file in Photoshop. It is important for it to be compatible to the Photoshop format, because if it is not, Lightroom may struggle in recognizing that Photoshop file when you try and import it. So leave the defaults to the cloud document directory if you have an account, which you should. If you're subscribing to CC, you will also get a cloud space and you can determine where that directory resides on your computer. Export is a relatively new feature. I believe it's at least 2 or 3 iterations old now with Photoshop. Just like Lightroom, Photoshop now allows you quick and direct exports, quick and dirty, I would call it. So PNG is something that I am not keen on. I don't mind a JPEG, and with a quality probably around 70 that I would personally prefer. And ask where to export, because I wish to know with regards to metadata. Yes, I do want my copyright and contact info, and when I'm exporting a JPEG at that, I probably am exporting it for a web environment or sharing it in an online or social media environment. So I will leave it to convert to sRGB. And that's about it. Performance, this is a fun one. So I would recommend, since this we're dealing with photography here, default photos. Now at the same time, this is just to ensure what it is, okay? And if in doubt, you just keep your cursor on that space, and underneath here in the description panel, it actually gives you the details of what it is talking about. Okay, so notice something in the description. It is talking about the cache tile size, amount of data Photoshop stores or processes at once. Choose bigger tiles for faster processing of documents. With large pixel dimensions, choose smaller tiles for documents with small pixel dimensions and many layers. Changes will take effect the next time you start Photoshop. So what are they talking about? So I'm kind of jumping the gun here, so please forgive me. You see this cache tile size. The default is 1024. If you have good computer resources available, go for the bigger one. And cache level, you can leave it to 4. I personally don't care about the 50 history states, because honestly, if I'm going to go back 50 states for whatever reasons, there may be a bit of a problem, because the more the history states, the greater the scratch disk space, and perhaps the slower the performance, depending on how you may have allocated the scratch disks. I am actually quite happy with about 25. Memory usage is the top. You can actually determine how much RAM you allocate to Photoshop. So the default is around 70%. If you've got tons of RAM and you make sure that you don't use any other applications at the same time, you're welcome to try increasing it, but test it out and see what happens, because you can always come back and reset these things, and we'll talk about that a little later. Graphics processor. Now, depending on the nature of graphics processor you may or may not have in your system, this may be available or not available to you. So if you do have a high quality graphics processor, you can check on the advanced tab, and you have, advanced, normal, and basic. I would leave it to the advanced and then see what it's all about. So here it'll use the graphics processor to accelerate computation and whatever it is. So I have the ability, I have checked it, and that's all that I really care about. So when we talk about scratch disks, what are scratch disks? Scratch disks is a hard drive space. It could be more than one. That's why I was using the plural, where Photoshop will store the temporary files, and it does create a whole lot of temporary files. You have whatever number of drives that are installed on your system will show up in here. Okay, so I have a bunch of drives. So I have a backup drive, I have another drive here, I have another base, which is my Mac hard drive, and then I have a data RAID set in here as well. So this is a RAID. I have allocated this as the primary drive. If I wanted to modify something, okay, so let's say I want this drive to become a temp drive, which will hold my cache from the scratch disk, and I want to take it up as the primary. You see these arrows pointing up and down. Simply click on this so that it's highlighted, and you simply bring it up. So now it'll first store here. When it starts to run out of space, then it'll go to this drive and then come to my operating system drive. So it's generally a good idea to keep the scratch disk, which is not your operating system, because then Photoshop doesn't have to worry about read-write simultaneously and concurrently at the same time. So let's say I'm okay with this. Cursors. How do your tool cursors appear? Personally speaking, the default may be normal brush tip. I like to see the actual brush size, and at the same time I do kind of like to see the center crosshair, so it gives me a very good idea of where exactly and what it's going to do. And then you have other options. It's entirely up to you how you wish to. So this is the only thing that I'm concerned about. Other cursors, standard, precise, I kind of like to leave it as a standard. And brush preview, I've left it to whatever the default was. The other thing is transparency and gamut. The grid size, when you create a Photoshop transparent file in Photoshop, you will see a checkered grid in the background. You can choose what size do you see in the grid. So I changed it to large. That's how it will be. These are just visual things, okay? And grid colors. Do you want it to be dark? Do you want it to be light, medium, whatever that suits your fancy? And you can modify the colors as well in there, but I suggest leave it alone. To me, this is an important part, particularly as a photographer. So the default generally here when you open it up will be a gray, dull gray, mid gray, and 18% gray. So I kind of like to choose a color. And to access the color picker, you simply click on this little block where the color is, and you can choose the color that you want. I have chosen a very bright fluorescent green because rarely is this color that will ever appear in a photograph. And if I wish to check my color gamut and any warnings, this will show up very, very properly. Units and rulers. Take your pick, whichever unit that suits you, go with that. Column size, not interested because then we're getting into typography. New document presets, print resolution 300. I mean, generally I would leave most of this stuff alone. I would leave this alone as well. Then coming into plugins. Make sure, particularly with the newer versions of Photoshop, because now they have an actual panel which has a filter gallery, make sure this is checked. You don't need to worry about the generator, and if you're using any added extensions, it's a good idea to allow them to connect online. Type we don't care about, we are photographers. 3D we don't really care about, we are photographers. Enhanced controls. If you have a touch bar, you're working on a laptop, you can activate this, and that may invoke that such certain features which are available to you through the touch bar. And finally in here, there's the technology previews. So when you check this, you will notice there's a bunch of things available, and you can actively check them so that they become available to you and you can test them out. And once you're done, you hit OK, at which point in time I suggest simply restart Photoshop. So quit Photoshop and restart, and all the new preferences would have happened within the framework of Photoshop. If I decide, hey, I'm going to quit Photoshop, so I quit Photoshop. And then when I come back in here, restart Photoshop, Photoshop is back to where it was, and I'll go to my home screen, Photoshop screen, and now, just for the heck of it, if I were to go check my preferences, all my preferences would be the same ones that I had chosen. That's all about setting your preferences. Now what happens if you are unhappy with your preferences? You can go back and try and remember what you had done and what you had not done, and get rid of, modify the preferences again to whatever the default was. There are alternative ways in which you can completely reset your preferences. There are two ways. One is via a keyboard shortcut. The issue with the keyboard shortcut is that if you use that, you lose everything from your preferences, which includes any keyboard shortcuts you might have created, any color settings that you might have set within Photoshop, any workspaces, customized workspaces for your personal usage that you might have created. Everything will go away. Okay, so be aware. The other one is through actually going to the file very specifically, and then finding the right file through the directory and arriving at that. So I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'm simply informing you that there are options available. Perhaps in another short few minute video, I will explain exactly how to reset your preferences. Hope this was helpful. My name is Asif Raza, and hope to see you again at the Digital Photo Academy. Thank you.